1, 2, go. You can start now.
Hi everyone, welcome to this session this evening. I'm going to start off just as people are joining us and ask you to look at this chart at the moment. And if you can hear me, could you look at this model and consider where you are right now in this curve in relation to your emotional response to COVID-19. So have a look just now and see where you would put yourself. And if you could add a number to the chat box just now, that would be great. Now, what I would like to say here is we all move through emotions in very different ways and at different paces. And for some, the impact can be greater than others. And right now, while we're all experiencing big challenges in the world, we all feel this in different ways. So the most important step just now is to be aware of your emotional response right now and ask yourself what you want to do with that self-awareness, what your next step's going to be. Now, this session this evening, I'd like to invite you to have a pen and paper ready because I'm going to ask you to do quite a lot of self-reflection and a few other activities as well. So if you can get a pen and paper handy before we get started, that would be really great. I'll also invite you, please add comments or questions along the way, and at the end, I'll take any questions that you have. Now, if we run out of time and I haven't answered your question, then I will get back to you after the session and make sure I've answered everyone's questions. Okay, so before we get started on the actual presentation, I'll just do an introduction. You must be wondering who I am actually right now. So my name is Nicola Barrington. I'm a positive psychologist and coaching psychologist. And as this little picture would suggest, my background is in education and have had 25 years experience of working in the Scottish education system. And the last 15 of those years were as a head teacher or principal, I think it's called here. And during that time, I was really interested in the power of positive psychology and coaching psychology to help children, not just children, but adults to thrive. So when I came out here to Abu Dhabi about 5 years ago, I decided to study that further. So I took on a master's in positive psychology and coaching psychology. And here you can see a picture of me with my father last year as I graduated from that master's. So as part of that master's, I did some research and I went back to the school situation where I came from, really. I went into a school in Abu Dhabi and I looked at the impact of a resilience programme on anxiety, depression and mental toughness amongst pupils. And that was published in the Middle East Journal of Positive Psychology. I've then gone on to certify myself to use mental toughness questionnaires, and that took me down a path of coaching an educational leader using the mental toughness questionnaires before and after the coaching to see what the impact was. I then went on to train and become a facilitator using Lego Serious Play for positive psychology, which is a really effective tool with both children and adults. And I did a positive psychology certificate here. And just very quickly to let you know, I'm a certified coach with the International Coaching Federation and also with the European Mentoring and Coaching Council as well. Okay, so that's the background that I bring to this session today. And I'll move on now and share what I'm going to talk to you about today. Okay, so I've written positive psychology during COVID-19, but that can apply to any challenging situation that you find yourself in. And I want you really to think about what could be the role of positive psychology in your life, whether it's your personal or your work life, that could help improve your well-being during challenging times. So first of all, I'm going to define what positive psychology is and compare that with traditional psychology. Then I'm going to talk to you about second wave positive psychology. What does this mean and what are the benefits of this? And then I'm going to spend most of the session talking to you about PERMA model of wellbeing and how we can apply this model of wellbeing during this current pandemic, or again during any challenging time that we find ourselves in. So PERMA, P-E-R-M-A, stands for P for positive emotions, E for engagement, R for positive relationships, M for meaning, and A for accomplishment. So during this presentation, I'm going to focus on 3 of those components: positive emotions, positive relationships, and meaning, simply because we've only got an hour together. Okay, so let's start off with what is positive psychology and what's the difference between that and traditional psychology. So if you have a look at this diagram here, and we'll start on the left-hand side of the diagram. Now, traditional psychology is a deficit model. It focuses on a person's mental illness by asking the question, what is wrong with you? And it aims to support the person to move from mental illness to mental flourishing, which is right in the middle there, in the neutral position. However, how would it be if we could give people psychological skills that actually would help them before things actually went wrong? That's where positive psychology aims to come in. It's a strengths-based model, and it concentrates on a person's well-being by asking the question, what is right with you? And then it raises the person's awareness of their strengths and their values, and it provides tools that they can use to move from the neutral position of mental flourishing to the flourishing stage. So that's the main difference between traditional psychology and positive psychology. And I'm just going to move on now and show you a very simple definition just to back this up. So positive psychology is a scientific study of what makes your life worth living. Now, positive psychology was formally launched by Professor Martin Seligman in 1998. And he called for positive psychology because he wanted it to catalyse a change in psychology and take the focus away from not only repairing the worst things in life, but also to building the best things in life. And he felt as though we should be thinking positive thoughts, cultivating positive emotions, and also using our signature strengths to achieve happiness. Now, this embrace of the positive psychology was a really big shift, and it's commonly called the first wave of positive psychology. So now I'm going to go on to define what the second wave is. So this was the start of the positive psychology movement, and it was very much focused on positive. So what is second wave positive psychology? Well, as I said, Martin Seligman came up with this in 1998, and it was very much based on the premise that positivity is good and negativity is bad, okay? And by labelling positive as desirable and negative as undesirable, this led people to think of positive psychology as only being associated with positive theory, and anything that was negative wasn't part of its remit. Okay, so many positive psychologists question this focus of positive psychology on purely positive emotions, and they pushed for it to include the role of negative emotions and also negative experiences in the achievement of well-being. And now, when I show you this definition of second wave positive psychology, you will see that it acknowledges both negative and positive emotions and says that both of these are essential to achieve a good life. So let's have a look. So second wave positive psychology recognises the need to engage with difficulties in life, just like the ones we're going through right now, and that they can actually be useful and valuable in some respects and be conducive to flourishing. So that is really good news for us, that we're not just looking at the yellow, shiny, happy faces that we see, smiley faces going around and thinking that's all positive psychology is. It's so much more than that. Okay, so now it's going to be time for your first reflection. So have your pen and paper ready. Okay, so reflecting on the negative experience of COVID-19 pandemic, what has been useful or valuable for you to learn? And that could be about yourself or about people around you or about the situation. So we're doing exactly what second wave positive psychology has defined. We're looking at a negative experience and seeing what can be useful or valuable for us to learn about it. So that's the first reflection. You can write down your reflections or you can do it in your head. It's entirely up to you, or you can add to the chat box, whatever you prefer. And also, again, thinking about this COVID-19 pandemic, have any aspects of it actually been positive for you? And again, take a couple of seconds just now just to reflect on that for you. Okay, now I'm going to move on to share some more information about this PERMA model of well-being. Okay, so here it is up on the screen at the moment. Now again, same guy, Martin Seligman, launched this PERMA model of well-being in 2011. And he wanted to measure and build human flourishing. And when we talk about flourishing, we simply mean doing good and feeling good. And you can measure your well-being. If you want to know where your well-being is in terms of this model, you can go onto a website called Authentic Happiness, and you can take an online assessment there, and it'll give you a score for each of these components if that's something you're interested in. So we're going to go through this just now, and again I'll just remind you, P for positive emotions, E for engagement, R for positive relationships, M for meaning, and A for accomplishment. Now, each of these elements has been found to enhance our well-being. And a person who is flourishing, that's the doing good and feeling good, has all 5 elements. Okay. However, most people are not actually flourishing. Only 16% of the population are actually flourishing. So that means that most of us are doing okay. Most of us say we want to be happy, that we want to lead a good life, and we want to be in control. However, the reality is that often we live our lives in a way that is not consistent with what we want to achieve, what we want to feel, and we want to experience in life. So well-being is very much about how you live your life. And high levels of well-being help us to learn more, become more productive, have better relationships, and actually experience higher life expectancy. So there's lots of great positives to increase our well-being. So I'm going to stop now and ask you to reflect. You'll see at the bottom of the screen there I've written PERMA with an H and a question mark. Many positive psychologists have questioned whether or not there should actually be a 6th element to this model. And that 6th element would begin with H. Okay, so what I want you to do is see if you can guess what you think that 6th element should be. So it begins with H. Okay, and if you put that in the chat box, that would be great. Now, I can't actually see the chat box, so I've no idea whether or not you're able to access that at the moment, but I'll just assume you can. And another question here, thinking about your own well-being and what we've spoken about there, and only 16% of the population are actually flourishing. What sort of life do you want to lead? Okay, so think about what that would mean for you. Okay, because I can't see the chat box, I'm just going to give you the answer here. The H stands for health, okay? And within that heading of health, what is suggested that would come in there would be exercise, diet, sleep, and maybe some mindful practice as well would come in under the umbrella of health, okay? Some other people have suggested it should be V for vitality, which means a similar thing. Okay, so we're going to move on to the P of PERMA now, which is positive emotions. And we're going to dive into this one and see what we can do in relation to our positive emotions. How can we increase our well-being by increasing our positive emotions? Okay, so there's the question there. How can we experience more, or how can you experience more positive emotions? Okay. So I'm going to talk to you a wee bit of theory, but I'm going to also try and keep this as practical as possible for you. First of all, starting off with negative emotions, because as we've said, it's the second wave positive psychology. There is a place for negative emotions, and negative emotions are important for us because we have to question why we're experiencing them. And if we go back and we look at our own negativity bias, that is helpful for us because it's there to alert us if there's any danger. All right, so negative emotions are important because they signal something to us and we can then decide how we want to react to that. So when we experience negative emotions, it's because we perceive a situation to be threatening for us. And we might tell ourselves a story like, oh, this is bad, or I don't like this. And our body then enters into fight or flight mode. And when it does that, what we do is literally, physically, we zoom in on the situation and we prepare ourselves to either stand up and fight or run away. So that's what happens with negative emotions. So now let's look at what happens with positive emotions. So when we actually experience positive emotions, our brain functions differently. We don't zoom in at all. In fact, what we do is we actually zoom out, we broaden and we build, okay? So what does this mean? Well, what it means is positive emotions actually literally expand our hearts and our minds and the environment that's around us. Our vision expands and we're actually able to be more creative and see more possibilities. And these positive emotions build us because every little micro positive emotion that you feel builds up in you and it creates more resilience within you. It makes you more creative and it allows you to socially connect more with people. And also it acts as a buffer against depression and also makes you feel better. Okay. But even although positive emotions are good for us, and we've heard how good they are for us, they're actually really hard to achieve. And the reason for that is because bad is stronger than good. Okay, going back a wee bit to that negativity bias that's inbuilt in us all to help us to survive. Factually, every single day of our life, we experience more positive emotions than we do negative ones. But what we do is we experience the negative ones as louder and stronger and having more of a lasting impact. So, and when we're busy and we're stressed and we're in challenging situations, we can get sucked into the negative and miss the positives. So let's look, that's just a summary of the theory that I've just talked to you about the impact of positive emotions on ourselves. So another little self-reflection here. When we're busy and we get so sucked into the negative that we miss the positive, what do you choose to focus on? Okay, so just have a think about that just now. What do you choose to focus on? So now I'm going to speak to you a little bit more. There's going to be 2 activities here that you can try out. So again, you'll need your paper and pen to hand. So the first thing we're going to look at are the stories that you tell yourself, the stories we all tell ourselves. Let's think about how our mind works. Okay, when we view a situation, we tell ourselves an internal story about what's happening, about what we see, and that story then triggers an emotional response in us and we behave accordingly. So I'm going to give you an example of what I'm talking about. So imagine you're at work and you're walking past and you see 2 managers and they're speaking, and as you walk past they stop speaking and they look at you. They don't say anything, they just look at you, and then you walk past. Okay, you can choose what happens next with regards to this situation. So for example, you can choose to tell yourself, oh, they must have been talking about me and that's why they've stopped talking. Oh, that report I sent in this morning, oh, maybe it's no good and they're not happy with it and they're not saying anything and that's why they stopped talking. And then from doing that, you start to experience really negative emotions. Oh, my report's not good enough. Oh, I'm not doing a good enough job. They're not happy with me, and so on and so forth. Okay? Or you can choose in that situation just to view them and say, oh, well, they're managers, they're maybe talking about something confidential and they don't want me to know because it's none of my business. And you just keep walking past and you're looking forward to your lunch and you're going to be working on another report in the afternoon. So you can see the difference between the 2 stories that I could choose to tell myself in that situation. And there's many other stories I could choose to tell myself as well. Okay, so think about situations that you've been in over the past week. Reflect on times when you've told yourself a story about a situation. And maybe it's led you to feel negative emotions. Think about that situation and reflect on, what did you tell yourself and what emotions did you feel? Were they negative emotions or were they positive emotions? Now that we know about the benefits of positive emotions and that experiencing them leads to broadening and building effect within us, we need to train our brains then to seek out these positive emotions so that we can experience that effect. So we need to really pay attention to the positive emotions. And one way to do that is to make choices about how we view new situations that we're in. So when you start to feel stressed or anxious or worried, stop and ask yourself these 2 questions. 1, how are you choosing to view the situation? And 2, what evidence do you have that the story you're telling yourself is actually true? And if you have no evidence that that story is true, then perhaps it's a time for you then to rethink the situation, because it's not going to serve you well to have negative emotions about something that you've got no evidence to back up. Okay? And maybe you want to tell yourself a different story. So how are you choosing to see the situation and what evidence do you have that the story you're telling yourself is true? So that's one tool that you can take away from today's workshop that you can use on a daily basis. And here's another one that we're going to look at, and it's called 3 Good Things. This is a very simple exercise. And this exercise is a way to increase positive emotions. And just to spend time thinking about moments and the positive emotions that these moments bring you. And by doing that, we're training our brain to focus on the positive. And again, this helps to broaden and build us. So this is a really, really popular exercise. And what I'd like to ask you to do is to do this exercise every night for the next week. All right, because the science behind this, the research behind it, has shown that if you do this, that you will increase your positive emotions and decrease depressive symptoms for up to 6 months after you've done this exercise. Okay, so the exercise asks you to write down 3 things you're grateful for each day for a week, and also to write down what you did to make the good things happen. So I'm going to give you an example of my own for this one, and then I'm going to ask you to reflect on 3 good things for today. Okay, so 3 good things for me today. One was I had a really good workout at the gym this morning. And what did I do to make that happen? I booked my class, I showed up, and I put in the effort. Okay. The second good thing for me today was finalising this presentation that I'm giving to you just now. And what did I do to make that happen? I planned some time in to make sure everything was running smoothly for it. And the third thing I did today, just before this presentation, is I made a really nice meal. And when I answer the question, what did I do to make this happen? I ordered Hello Chef, and they really helped me to make the lovely meal. Okay, so that's what I'm reflecting on. Those are my 3 good things for today. Now you might say, gosh, they're only small, but it doesn't matter, because what we're trying to do is pick out as many positive emotions and just spot them and remind ourselves of them and get the benefit from them. Okay, so what I would like you to do is reflect on your day today and write down the answer to those 2 questions. Okay, so I'll just give you a minute or 2 to write down 3 good things that you're grateful for today and what you did to make those good things happen. Okay. So now, before we move on to relationships, you've now got 2 activities that you can use anytime you want to increase positive emotions. And when things are particularly challenging for you, then you might want to call on these. Okay? So now we're going to move on to positive relationships. Now, before we can experience positive relationships with other people around us, it's really important that we look at the relationship that we have with ourselves. So that's where we're going to start. Okay. So we all have the same basic needs: food, water, clothing and shelter. But our values are different from each other, and our values very much dictate the type of life, how we live our lives. And if we live our life in line with our values, then our well-being is increased by that. Okay, so what I want you to reflect on just now is, what do you value in your life? Because that's got to be really important, and that's got something that we need to protect and promote so that we can be authentically who we are. Okay, so what do you value? What is important to you in your life? Who are you and what do you represent? What do you stand for? Okay, and that's what we want to project to the people around us as well. Okay, so have a wee think about that just now. Now we're going to try an activity called Best Possible Self, and it's a visualisation, and it only takes about a minute or so. So what I'd like you to do is just close your eyes while I give you the instructions for this activity. Okay, so I'm just going to get started just now with it. Close your eyes just now, and I want you to select a future time period and imagine at that time you are expressing your best possible self strongly. Visualise this. Visualise your best possible self in a way that is pleasing to you and that you are interested in. Imagine in close detail where you have worked hard and succeeded in achieving your life goals. You might think of this as reaching your full potential, hitting an important milestone, or realising one of your life dreams. The point is not to think of unrealistic fantasies, rather things that are positive and attainable within reason. And you can open your eyes now. And what I would ask you to do just now is take a few minutes to actually write down in detail what your best possible self looks like. What are you doing in this moment in time that you've chosen in the future? Who's around you? How are you feeling? What have you achieved? And put as much detail as you possibly can into this best possible self. Okay? And probably, as I say, you might want to reflect on this after this presentation and spend a bit more time on it. But once you've written it down, then I would ask you to reflect on what effect does this exercise have on you? How close is your life right now to the one that you saw when you closed your eyes and you imagined your best possible self? And what values, what personal values did you start to see emerging here? When we know more about ourselves and what our values are, we can show up more authentically in our relationships with other people. And we can be who we are and not who people think we are. So that's really important before we even branch out and look at our connections with other people. So now that's what we're going to look at, our relationships with others. So how can we experience more positive relationships with others? Our relationships are the greatest source of positive and negative emotions. So investing in the positive relationships is going to increase our positive emotions and it will also improve our well-being. Now, relationships at work can have as much impact on us as our personal relationships. For example, a poor relationship with your manager at work can lead to a 25% higher risk of heart problems, and this increases the longer you work for that manager. So you can see a real negative impact when you have a negative relationship with someone. So again, it's time to reflect on a few questions for you. What relationships are important to you in your life right now? Who is in your circle? Okay, who's in your tribe or your group or your team, whatever you want to call it? And is there anybody that you want to be there who isn't at the moment? And is there anyone who's there that you need to focus on? Maybe during this situation that we're going through just now, there might be someone in your circle that you haven't been able to focus on. Maybe they're geographically somewhere else and you can't reach out to them in the same way you did before. So have a think about that just now. Okay, so I'm going to just go through 4 ways to develop good relationships, and we're going to look then at another activity that you can do after this presentation. So 4 ways to develop good relationships. Really listening to people, really listening, not thinking about what your answer is going to be next to what they're saying, but actually listening to the words that they're using, and also listening to the things that they're not saying as well. Okay, eye contact, body language, showing that you are there. Build trust with people, and that's about a series of a collection of moments of trust. You know, you say you're going to do something, you do it. You make sure you're on time, you follow up on the things that you've promised. Okay, if someone tells you something in confidence, you make sure you don't share it with anyone else. Little moments of trust build up and build up, a wee bit like the positive emotions that we talked about earlier on, building up and making you stronger. Give people your undivided attention. Okay, so that's about putting the phone away, all right, and really seeing the person and really valuing them and letting them know that you're there 100% for them. And the last one, own your own statement. What does that mean? I'll give you an example. That's about you being honest in your relationships with other people, not feeling as though if I say that to them, they won't be my friend anymore. Because relationships are built on honesty and about you being authentic. So part of being authentic is being able to own your statement and say what you feel you need to say. For example, let's just say I'm having a conversation with my friend and she's on her phone and she's doing all kinds of things, you know, and I'm getting annoyed by it. So if I own my statement, what I would say to her is something like, I feel you're not listening to me when you look at your phone, and I have got something really important that I want to share with you. Now, I'm being absolutely respectful, but I'm owning my statement and I'm telling the truth. I'm being authentic to myself, and I'm letting her know how I feel about that. And that's really important in good relationships, that you can have these honest dialogues. Okay, so practice these 4 steps on maybe a relationship that you've already identified that you want to improve on. Now here's a lovely activity, really, really nice, and it's called the gratitude visit. And this is something that creates a lot of positive emotion, but also strengthens a relationship. So let's look at this activity. And the first part of it is to think of the last week and write down 5 people, I'll start again. Think of the last week and write down 5 things people have done for which you are grateful. Okay, and then we'll move on to the second one in a minute. I'll just give you an example for me. So 5 things that people have done for me in the last week. 1, a client wrote me a positive recommendation. 2, my husband made me my dinner. 3, the gym owner opened their gym classes this week. My stylist coloured my hair. And my best friend took me for a coffee. Okay, so there are 5 people that have done something for me this week that I'm grateful for. So the second part of this activity is to write a short letter of gratitude to one of the people from my list. Reflect on the event and express in writing your gratitude, focusing on the positive aspects. So I could choose one here to write to. In fact, I spoke to the gym owner about how pleased I was that the gym had opened and how it made me feel so much better. Now, I didn't write a short letter, but I could have done that. And then the next step that I could have taken to make it even more powerful would be to share that letter with the person. And the best results are when you do it face to face. So what I can do after this presentation just now is to write my short letter of gratitude to the gym owner. And when I go to the gym class tomorrow, just before it starts, I can go over and read out to her what I've written down and hand it to her and see what the impact is on her and me and our relationship. Okay, so that might be an activity you might want to use for someone who's in your circle right now that you feel you maybe want to give a bit more attention to. Okay, I'm just checking my times. Okay, all right. So there are some activities for you can try out to increase your positive relationships. So we started off with best possible self. That was looking at the relationship with you and what are your values and how are you going to use those values to create that best possible self in the future. Then we looked at the 4 steps that you can use to improve your relationships with people. And this third activity here is looking at the gratitude visit and doing this one. And it is, I've done this one a couple of times. It's really, really powerful. So this one's got a lot in it. And with regards to PERMA, it does increase the positive emotions. It does increase your positive relationships. It does have meaning, which is what we're going to go on to next. And actually writing the letter and reading it out to someone face to face is a real accomplishment. These things feel a bit awkward. They're not things that we maybe normally do. But this is a situation where fortune favours the brave. So if you can take that step to do this slightly uncomfortable thing, you will be rewarded for it. Okay, so let's look at meaning. How can you experience more meaning? Okay, so according to Michael Steger, who is the guru of purpose and meaning, there are 3 aspects that we should be looking at when we consider meaning in our life. First of all, significance. Why is your life important and valuable? Okay, and I want you to think about that one just now. I just want you to reflect on it. Why is your life important and valuable? Because this is really important, that your life has significance. The second aspect is coherence. What is happening in your life right now and how do you make sense of it? How are you making sense of this COVID-19 pandemic and anything else that's personal to you? Okay, how do you create coherence in your life? Reflect on that one just now as well. And the last one is purpose. What is your mission? What are you striving towards? What do you want to achieve? And that might tie in with your best possible self. What is it you're striving towards? Why are you here? What difference is it you want to make? So these are the 3 aspects that come into meaning in life and are really important for us just to consider in our own lives just now. And I'm going to go a wee bit deep here. We're going to talk about a guy called Viktor Frankl, and I'll explain a wee bit about him in a wee second. Okay, so here's quite a deep quote to have a look at. He who has a why to live for can bear almost anyhow. He who has a why to live for can bear almost anyhow. Okay, and let's just look at this in the context of Viktor Frankl. So he was a professor of neurology and psychiatry, and he wrote a very, very famous book called Man's Search for Meaning. And this was based on his own personal experiences of suffering in concentration camps during World War II. Now, what Frankl noticed when he was in the concentration camps were there were 2 types of people. There were those people who completely lost hope. And there were the other type of people who viewed the suffering as a challenge that had to be overcome. And despite their suffering, they lived every day according to their why. And according to Frankl, we all need to have something bigger than ourselves to give us our why. Now, Frankl's why was that he wanted to stay alive, to tell the stories to his students, to contribute to knowledge and learning based on the experience that he had gone through. That was what kept him going. That was his why. So what I want you to think about is, what is your why? Okay. Now, again, just looking at another important part of meaning in life. We're almost finished here. This is quite an interesting quote. Between the stimulus and response, there is a gap. Now, stimulus is just experience. So between something you experience and the response you give to it, there's a gap. And in that gap, you have the ability to choose how you want to respond to any situation. Now, Frankl says we always have a choice when something happens. We have a choice and we can control how we respond. Now, sometimes that is not easy. But he says no matter what our circumstances are or whatever level of suffering we go through, we can choose how we want to show up. So sometimes we need a bit of help with that. And a highly effective tool that you can use that's going to help you to create maybe a bigger gap so that you have a chance to think about how you want to respond is something called mindfulness. And mindfulness is about being present and fully engaged in whatever we're doing in any given moment, not judging and not being distracted. Okay, and that changes our brain and it improves our ability to respond in any situation. It's also got a lot of other benefits. It decreases anxiety and depression, chronic pain and stress, and it increases our attention, working memory, problem-solving ability, and pro-social behaviour. Now, if you want to try mindfulness, I've not got time to go into it tonight, but if you want to try it, there's many apps. For example, Headspace is a great one to start off with, or you may want to look online and try some guided meditations. I hope this presentation has been useful to you and that you've now got some new tools that you can use that can help you increase your well-being. And if you want to provide any feedback on the presentation in the chat box, I'd really appreciate that. I think we've now got some time for questions.
Thank you, Ms. Nicola. So we have few questions from the audience, and there was also some interactive questions that you brought up, and a lot of them had answered, and you can see their answers in the comments. However, the question that we have from an anonymous person, how to develop a positive attitude in the students for teaching learning process?
That's a good question. When you think about positive attitudes for learning, that you're going into the realms of positive education, and the key sort of underpinning sort of foundation of that is being the role model yourself and living that whole sort of attitude, and then being able to see you in action to try and develop their attitude towards the learning as well. So a lot of positive education and positive psychology within education is very much values based, and it's about a whole school approach and about everyone showing up and showing that attitude towards learning, even from the support staff, the office staff, from the teaching staff, everyone replicating and showing that through their own behaviour for children to see the benefits of that. I can give a fuller answer to that at a later time, but that's the sort of main factor I would say that would influence your students.
Thank you, Ms. Nicola. Another question from Nitya Sunit. It is really a very relevant topic, and COVID-19 has taught us how important it is to spend time with our family, how to enjoy homely food, healthy food, how can we exercise staying indoor, how to regulate our time of the day.
How can we exercise?
Things, creative things. That was, I think, her answer to one of your, to one of the questions. Yeah, so let us share that. Beautiful, Nitya. Okay, from Peter. It is really an unuseful seminar before having a good vacation. We can do good things. How to make our life happier? Thought we have many obstacles. Is that question, Peter? I think, yeah, how we can do things, how to make our life happier through, though we have many obstacles. So what is your comment about his statement?
So how can you make your life happier when you have many obstacles? So when we talked at the beginning about second wave positive psychology, that's exactly that. It's about looking at the negative experiences that we're having and the negative emotions that we're having and asking ourselves, what can we learn from this, okay, about ourselves so that we can grow? And sometimes it's about developing meaning through these difficult situations and building up your resilience. And when you've gone through the difficult situations, being able to appreciate the positive experiences as well. Okay, so I'd say that the negatives help develop your resilience and help you to appreciate the positives. And there's such a thing as post-traumatic growth that comes from negative experiences, which increases your well-being. And that's when you go through a very difficult experience like this one we're going through just now, and you come out the other side, but you don't come out where you were, you actually come out stronger because you've learned things about yourself, because you've been tested that you didn't know before. So sometimes going through the difficult things challenges us, yes, but it also forces us maybe to face up to things that we didn't know about ourselves that we can actually do, and it maybe changes our mindset as well.
Thank you. Let's go to another question. How does reading books or ebooks affect in these days of COVID-19? Explain in brief, and also if you recommend any book best for most of teacher.
How do ebooks affect learning?
Yes. How does reading books or ebooks affect in these days of COVID-19? They want you to explain in brief, and if you recommend any book for teachers.
I'm not sure if I've understood this one, but I'll answer as best I can. The learning takes place not when you read a book, whether it's an e-book or a physical book, but the learning takes place when you reflect on what you've read. So I think whether it's an e-learning book or another one, it's about putting in, like this presentation today, putting in chances to reflect on the learning that's gone ahead. So if you're doing work with your students online, I would always be looking for how can they apply what they've read and what they've learned into real situations that impact on them. It would be about trying to get them to take the knowledge and find ways to apply it. So whatever way they're learning, it's all about reflection and application in real life situations that make sense to them. And I'm not sure if you want a book about teaching, or you're looking for a book about positive psychology or positive education. So maybe if you put in the chat box what kind of book you're looking for, I can certainly make some recommendations for you.
A question from Ajna. All parents want the best for their children, want to happy and flourish. How do teacher can apply positive psychology in education fruitfully? Could you explain life example?
Okay, that's a very good question. So positive education, I sort of touched on this a wee bit earlier on. Positive education or positive psychology and education, which is what it's called, positive education, is not just a curriculum that you put into a school. It's a whole way of being. And it's about teacher training, but not just teachers, everyone that works in the school being trained on what it means about how we foster positive emotions, how we show this to the children. And it's about learning it, living it, teaching it, right? So it's about taking all of those parts and making a whole school community that is based on positive education. And if you want a great example of a school that's done this, it's not here, unfortunately, it's Geelong Grammar in Australia. They're 10 years down the road of implementing positive education in their school. And that'll show you the extent of the work that they have done to really make an impact in their school. So for example, putting a programme into a school is a good start, but it needs to be not just about putting the curriculum in, it's about how we teach it, it's about our relationships with the children, it's about how we interact with other adults and parents. Okay, so when we talk about the PERMA model, if you think of that, implementing that in your day-to-day, how you live as a teacher, as a parent, as a child, that's how you make an impact, that's how you increase well-being in schools. It's about the academic side, and it's also about the PERMA and bringing the two of these together.
Thank you, Ms. Nika. That was for Ajna, and hope that answered your question, Ajna. Another question from an anonymous audience: how can we control on negative emotions and rude behavior that overwhelms that gap?
How can you control it? I think
emotions and rude behavior that overwhelms that gap.
Okay, so negative emotions are about telling us something. Okay, so what are the negative emotions? That's the purpose of them, is to give us some sort of message, and we need to understand what that message is that they're telling us. So if you've got children whose behaviour is negative or challenging, there's a reason that this is going on. So it's about finding out what the issue is. We're not saying this is acceptable, but equally telling a child it's not acceptable is not going to stop it if there's an underlying issue there. So it's about trying to take some time to find out what that issue is underneath, so that you can then work alongside that child to address that behaviour, to help them, to give them strategies to turn that behaviour around. And that's about positive relationships. So you can see how PERMA comes into almost all of the answers that I'm giving just now. But that's about, difficult as it is when a child is showing challenging behaviour, it's about building a relationship with them and trying to get underneath what is actually causing that challenging behaviour, so that you can help them to turn that behaviour around, because it's not going to serve them, it's going to make an impact on the rest of the class, and obviously it's going to impact on the teacher and the parents as well of that child.
Thank you. Another question from Lamia: how to spread positivity around you with your students and family despite the constant pressure you feel?
It's difficult. It is difficult. But even if you try small steps, even if you try 3 good things with your students over a week and see the difference it makes. All right, just try small things, because you've got so much else going on. And also, because you're so busy trying to implement everything else, maybe try thinking of some of these ideas that I've given you today, not as an extra thing to do, but maybe changing how you do something, instead of thinking, oh gosh, here's something else, I've got to add positive psychology in with everything else that I'm doing. But could you do some work on gratitude for a week? Could you get the students to be sending letters or hand delivering letters? Could that be part of your curriculum, or could you take something else out so that you could put some focus in for that? I'm not quite sure where exactly that would fit in your curriculum, but could it be fit? Could you imaginatively find ways that you could incorporate some aspects of positive psychology into work that you're already doing that might bring it alive, and it might give a bit more meaning to it, you know? So it's trying not to feel as if you've got to add something else in, but maybe trying doing some things differently where you can incorporate aspects of psychology.
Okay, question from VN: how do we increase the gap between stimulus and response to steer the kind of response towards a more positive one, and not what comes to mind first?
Great question. So that's what we touched on on the last slide, was mindfulness. And there's a lot of really, really good mindfulness programs. I don't know if you're a parent or a teacher, but it doesn't matter. There's a lot of mindfulness programs out there can be used for children or adults, guided meditations and apps that you can use. Mindfulness is highly effective in increasing that gap. And you can train your brain through mindfulness to increase the gap, so that you're not kicking off as soon as something happens and reacting and then regretting your reaction afterwards. So I would say for many, many reasons, but particularly what you've asked there, mindfulness is really, really effective. And as I say, it would be something that I would now, going back into school, I would put mindfulness in every single day. I would start the day off with mindfulness, and I would get the children trained in using this because it's so powerful.
Thank you. I'll just take one last question, sorry, because we have another presenter is waiting in the queue. But good question from Suhail Ahmed Siddiqui. How to build a good rapport, positive relationship with learners when especially we are unable to meet them face to face during this distance learning?
Very challenging, very, very challenging. I think it's just really important, you know, when we talked about the 4 steps to building positive relationships, I think it's just about letting children know that, okay, you're not physically present with them, but you see them and you see the effort that they're making, the contribution they're making, and you just make sure that they know that you care about them, and that they make a difference, you know, and that you know that they've worked hard. So it's just really about maybe taking those 4 steps of the positive relationships that we talked about earlier and seeing if there's anything in there that you could do a little bit more of. And just acknowledging, just being honest, it is difficult, you know, and just checking in and making sure that they're all right.
Thank you so much, Ms. Nicola. And I would like to thank the audience because I know there are lots of questions. I can see maybe 30 more questions, but we run out of time. Sorry, audience. But Ms. Nicola, in case if there is a way for audience to communicate with you, if you can just leave your email. Okay, so yeah. So in this slide, you can see Ms. Nicola's information, her email. So in case if you have a crucial question that you would love to have an answer to, you can email it to her through this email. And thank you, Ms. Nicola. Thank you, audience, for your interactive questions. And I can see lots of appreciation here to you, Ms. Nicola. So thank you so much for this fruitful session. And now I'm going to ask Ms. Nicola to leave the seminar. So the next presenter is in the queue. I think she's already here, is going to join us in the next session. The next session will be in Arabic, so whoever is bilingual can stay and attend the session. Thank you so much. Thank you, Ms. Nicola.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Nicola. Thank you.
Okay, I'm just trying to get myself out of here.
It's okay, take your time.
أستاذة منى جاهزة؟ بس ممكن تلغي الميوت من عندك لو سمحت.